Hi everybody. The term vaccination is quite familiar to every one of us because from the time we are born, intermittently we are exposed to the term of vaccination. Right from the birth of a baby, the first day of its birth itself, we vaccinate the child. Now, why do we have to do this? What is the point in doing this? We would always say that of course people in the earlier days they used to never vaccinate their children, but why do we have to do it right now? Of course it's quite clear to us because the emerging trend of rapidly mutating viruses as well as bacteria is making it trivial that one should be able to withstand the high hazards which a virus or a bacteria can pose in our life. Even now today, amidst this COVID-19, everyone knows the whole world is on the wheels to get an efficient vaccine which is against coronavirus COVID-19. So even every year the WHO has been practicing or celebrating the immunization week, and this year we celebrated it in April last week with the motto of vaccines working for all. So, irrespective of being a developed country or a underdeveloped or a developing country, the vaccines are prevalent in all countries with the aim of providing healthy solutions against microbial attacks. Today, we are going to talk about the different routes by which vaccinations can be done. As we mentioned earlier, vaccination is important to protect all our children from serious illness. We always want to prevent the outbreak of preventable diseases and also to protect all those people who we care about as well as save money and time. Some of the interesting facts that which I would like to share about immunization is that almost 2.5 million deaths are being prevented due to vaccination every year, and not all vaccines are given as shots. Some of them can be given also as oral vaccines. As we know, in the case of polio vaccine, we give it as oral doses. And the global measles mortality has declined by about 74% with the help of the vaccination protocol which we follow. Polio cases have been decreased over 99%, and immunization through vaccines is the safest way to protect against diseases. There was a time at which our forefathers were dreaded by diseases such as smallpox or vasuri and various other diseases which was very much dreadful in their lives. But right now we are not much scared about them because they are eradicated from this earth to some extent. Polio and all that, smallpox is completely eradicated. Of course, polio is under almost, we do expect a 99% removal of polio right now, but except there are a few instances where polio is coming, but it's a very rare instance by which we can see polio cases right now. So, all this is possible with the help of vaccination. Now, this is the National Immunization Schedule for 2017 and 18, which was been published by the Ministry of Health and Welfare of Government of India. And we can see that on the birth itself, we have a BCG vaccine, which is against TB, a oral polio vaccine against polio, hepatitis B. Then after 6 weeks, we have the pentavalent 1 as well as the OPV 1 and the rotavirus vaccine. OPV, as we all know, is the oral polio vaccine, and pentavalent vaccine is against a single vaccine which is against 5 diseases: diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus, and hepatitis B, as well as the Haemophilus influenza infection. And rotavirus vaccine is against rotavirus infection, which is a serious cause of diarrhea among children. And like that, and we can see that in 10 weeks and 14 weeks we have again further booster doses of OPV and pentavalent. In 9 to 12 months we have measles vaccines, the MR vaccines, then JE is for Japanese encephalitis, and the PCV vaccine, which is a pneumococcal conjugate vaccine. And And in 10 years, 16 years, as well as when you are pregnant, when your mother is pregnant, we have the TT or the tetanus toxoid vaccines. So regardless of the different type points that we come across in our life, the vaccines have a great role in our life. Now, okay, if you have completed even 40 years of age, if a sharp nail comes and pierces your foot or your hand, immediately you go and take a TT to protect yourself from further bacterial infection, or as well as to overcome the consequences of a bacterial infection, which would cause a disease called the tetanus. So that's the role of vaccines in your body, in your life. Now, as the saying says, not all roads lead to Rome. Okay, vaccines are not like every time you get immunity. You get immunity only if it has been passing through the correct road and the correct place of its site of action. A vaccine has to reach at its site of action, only then its function will be brought about. The same way here, as we told, not all roads lead to Rome, not all routes of a vaccine will give its effectiveness. Some vaccines will have to be given orally, and some vaccines will have to be given intramuscularly. Some of them would have to be given as subcutaneously, and some of them will have to be given intradermally. Now, coming to the oral vaccines are those vaccines, the oral route is chosen for those vaccines which would have an effect on the digestive tract. Now, coming to the other one, you have the intramuscular route. The vaccines which have to be given, which will be effective, which have to be acted on the muscles, should be given through the intramuscular route. Now, you might think, what is the difference between DTWP and DTAP, and what is DT and TD and all that? Okay, DT, as we told, as we know, that is diphtheria and tetanus. The term D and T, it refers to diphtheria, vaccines against diphtheria and tetanus, and WP is a whole cellular pertussis, as was the other one is the acellular pertussis. And the capital letter DT vaccine is mainly given for children which are being less than 7 years old, and the TD vaccine, which is also against diphtheria and tetanus, but it is given for people who are greater than 7 years of age. Now, we have the next route that we have is a subcutaneous route, and through the subcutaneous route, we give two main injections, the measles, against measles, as well as the yellow fever. And the intradermal route, now the most predominant one that we give is the BCG vaccine, which is against what? Tuberculosis, okay, or which has been caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Now, we are going to deal with today what are the different aspects of these routes of injection or routes of immunization, and what are the advantages as well as the disadvantages that they face. The routes of administration, as we told, is the path by which a vaccine is brought into contact with the body, and it is a critical factor for the success of immunization. And we always make sure that the substance must be transported from the site of entry point of the body to where its action should happen, or to the desired place where its action should take place. And using the body's transport mechanisms for this purpose is not trivial. Now, coming to the next one, oral vaccination. That's the first one which we are talking about. Oral vaccination, it makes sure is a technique in which we do not use a needle or the syringe, and it does not require any trained health personnel here, because oral vaccine can be given by any layman. And you can see that the oral polio vaccines which we give in India has been given by many volunteer vaccinators, and about 150 million children have been vaccinated so far with OPV vaccine. And oral vaccine also has a very good speed of vaccine delivery, and it has been found that one of oral route is a mucosal route, okay. And what happens during this route of delivery, what happens, the secretory antibodies such as isotype A or the secretory IgA, a protease resistant antibody is mainly being formed, Okay, and this will help in the entrapment of pathogens, preventing them from attachment to the epithelium and also invasion of the mucosa into surrounding tissues and organs. So basically the first route of entry of any virus or any bacteria is most probably through the mucosal surfaces, and when you vaccinate the person through the mucosal route, such as oral route, which is one among them, you get a higher amount of secretory IgA, which will help them to prevent the entrapment of these microbes onto the mucosa, as well as they are spreading into the various other tissues. And it has also been found that rapid immune responses have been found in oral vaccines compared to the parenteral vaccination, and it is more stable in halting the rapid spread of the endemic infections. And it is also reported to cause cross-reactive antibodies, which will give a broader protection. Now, OPV vaccine, that is a Sabin's vaccine. Sabin's vaccine, and is a mixture of the live attenuated poliovirus strains. It produces antibodies in the blood and it protects us against polio paralysis, and a local immune response has been found in the intestines and it inhibits the subsequent infection. Now, the second oral vaccine that we have is the oral rotavirus vaccine, which has been given to protect infants against the diarrhea, which could lead into their death. Now, we also have an animal version of a vaccine which has been given for the animals. Now, to prevent rabies, we have an oral rabies vaccine in the wild type populations, and it has been found that this vaccine has been given as a bait among the animals, and it has been found in Switzerland. The spread of rabies in foxes were being halted when 60% of the fox population was vaccinated orally. Of course, you can't expect foxes to open their mouth so that we can give a vaccine for them. So what you do is you put this vaccine as a bait for them, and they have it accidentally or not. What are the disadvantages of this technique? Protecting the antigens against degradation in the digestive system. That's something which is important, because as even though we take this vaccine orally, you have to overcome various other factors, like there would be degradative proteins which have been found in our digestive system, and also what happens is there are also various other physiological barriers, like we have the pH, the proteolytic enzymes, which will be harmful for various oral as well as intranasal administered vaccines. Especially in the case of subunit vaccines and inactivated vaccines, which could result in the destruction before they initiate any immune response. And to overcome this limitation, the oral vaccines should be encapsulated in appropriate substances so that we can protect them from harsh physiological environments. And some of the live oral polio vaccines also would show serious adverse effects, because sometimes they would revert back into a virulent form, or via mutations, or by the induction of harmful inflammations. So that's about the oral route that we have to talk about. Now comes the next one, the intranasal route. The intranasal spray application of a vaccine, it is also a needle-free approach, as we saw in the case of oral vaccine, and there are mainly two vaccines which we use as nasal vaccines. Now, the first one is a flu-mist vaccine, which is against influenza virus. It was been approved in 2003 in the United States, and then we have the Nasovac H1N1 vaccine, which was approved in India in 2010. I hope this is clear to you. We will be continuing the remaining routes of immunization in the next sessions.